My name is Jeff McDonald. I'm the Chair of Planning and Development and Heritage for the town. I'm also a councillor for Ward 2 Stewart's Cove. Present to me on my left is Mr. Dale McKeegan, Director of Planning for the town, and to my right is Mr. Phil Ruff, Town Planner. For those who were present here back at the last meeting in September, and when we didn't get to you, first of all, I'd like to again apologize to you for not being able to get to you at that point in time. We ran long. I certainly did appreciate everybody's patience in the room. And for those who were able to return, I really sincerely appreciate you participating in the public meeting here tonight. And for those new just joining us here this evening, that at least gives you the opportunity to be present and to make your submissions and your comments and your feelings known on the matter. So welcome everybody. I want to thank everybody for attending here tonight, as well as those who might be joining us online. I'll just indicate at this time that if you want to comment formally on anything from tonight's meeting, the town will accept written responses provided directly to the planning development to the planning department by email or in writing until 12 on October the 21st. Please note that comments provided on any social media platform are not captured as part of the written submission process. There is one application on our agenda for this evening. After the application being presented tonight, there will be an open floor for any questions or comments on the applications. Questions via social media will be monitored and submitted to be read into the record and answered. To ask a question, please use the comment field on either YouTube or Facebook, where you are viewing the live stream. Now, as this is a public meeting, you are required to provide your name and address when asking a question. Now, before I turn the microphone over to Mr. Philip Ruff, our town planner, I do want to make a general statement about how this meeting will be conducted tonight. First of all, I will ask that everyone here be respectful of one another and be patient and allow each other time to speak and respond. And to keep this meeting moving in a smooth and orderly manner, the following practices and customs are going to be observed. And comments and presentations ought to focus on the nature of the merits or likely consequences of the proposed application and avoid motives or personalities of those who might be presenting. And comments should be focused on the application on hand and not on prior applications or prior proposals. And all comments or questions are to be directed to myself as the chair, who will then decide who's responsible for answering the questions. Presentations are going to be limited to 5 minutes for individuals or 10 minutes for groups. A request for additional time can be made to myself as chair, and I'll certainly consider that. So I do want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Due to the number of people in the room, certainly I do hope we'll have a nice orderly meeting and able to address any concerns that you might have, or at least gain your comments so that they can be incorporated for consideration at planning board. At this time, I would hand over things to Mr. Phil Ruff, our town planner, for his presentation on our single agenda item of the evening.
Thank you. So this is a rezoning request from R&D Builders. It's for Forest Trails Phase 4. So the application has been received to rezone the lands from the medium density residential zone, the R2, with a sustainable subdivision overlay to a multi-unit residential zone at the end of Hollis. So the purpose of this zoning change is to facilitate the construction of 2 38-unit apartment buildings and 4 stacked townhouse lots as last phase of the Forest Trail subdivision. A copy of the subdivision plan, I can bring it up, it was part of the package that was sent out to you, and there are renderings of the buildings, which I can bring up and have up on screen. In accordance with section 3.2 of the town zoning bylaw, Council shall hold a public meeting to solicit input from residents on the proposed amendment. At this meeting, we're only addressing the request to rezone subject land from the R2 with the sustainable subdivision overlay to the R3 zone. The specifics of the design of the future subdivision and developments are not under consideration at this time. These are addressed through a separate application process and will require additional council review and approval. Multi-unit dwellings, i.e. apartments, they're both the same use. Over 12 units are conditional uses within the R3 zone. So the R3 zone has development standards which place restrictions on multi-unit dwellings, including density and established lot standards. The current sustainable subdivision overlay also permits multi-unit dwellings but has no limits on density or specific lot standards for them. So when reviewing applications for rezoning, council considers the following: conformance of the zoning request with the town's official plan, compatibility of proposed zoning with adjacent neighborhoods, and suitability for the land for the proposed purpose. These are just some of the ones. There is a whole list in our zone bylaw, which we can provide a copy of. And then in terms of notification, so this was made in conjunction with section 3.2.3 of our bylaw. So letters were sent to adjacent landowners within a 150-meter radius of the subject property. We had 2 newspaper ads in the September 28th and October 5th editions of The Guardian. There was a sign placed on the property indicating that a zoning application was submitted, as well as there's a notice posted on the town's Facebook page. Just summary of the application and notification.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. And now, before turning things over to the applicant for their presentation, I might ask that you do bring up the renderings of the proposed plan just on the screen so people can have an idea of what they're looking at and to assist the applicant in their presentation. Okay, so this is, just for the record, the agenda item is formerly known as RZ001-24 from R&D Builders, rezoning request of an R2 with an SS overlay to R3 at the Forest Trails Phase 4 being PID 289512. We do have representatives here from the applicant R&D Builders. I would call them at this time to make their presentation to this meeting. And gentlemen, I apologize, and I'll just indicate this for the record, and I meant to do this earlier, just so everybody understands as well that there will be no final decisions made on this application here this evening. At the end of the meeting, I will indicate our next steps, but I just want everybody to know that no decisions will be made until people are given the opportunity to make comment here tonight in person or to file written submissions, as I indicated earlier. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, gentlemen.
That's great. Hi there. My name's Tim Driscoll. This is Mitch Rogavine. We're partners in R&D Builders. We are 2 of the developers involved in the Forest Trails development. We are looking to change the zoning from an R2 with a sustainable overlay to an R3, applying for increased density to achieve affordable housing. The R3 zoning has more established lots, development standards, and density, so this would give you guys a little bit more say or know what's going on other than an R2 zoning. So.
Pretty well done.
Okay, before I turn the floor over to people here for public comments, I just have a few questions, gentlemen, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, in your view, with the current zoning, would that be able to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish here with your proposed build?
Yeah. So with the R2 zoning, I believe we have enough room to do exactly what we want, but I believe the zoning for an R3 would give people more standards. Like there's more
Established lot development standards on that sort of density than the.
Okay, so, and with respect to the two buildings that you're looking to construct, these 238-unit apartment buildings, in terms of when you're looking to begin building, can you indicate when, if ever, that might happen?
Probably we would have to get everything approved what we want to do for the buildings. Probably be starting like in a year's time.
Okay, and can you indicate if you've had any conversations about the roadway that exists at the end of Hollis and where it might extend to?
The road's going to extend to McIntosh. That's been something that the province wanted to do for quite some time, and it's going to happen. I guess they want this to happen, so it creates more of a safety issue for Reeves Estates and for flow of traffic.
And have you had any discussions with the province about that work being undertaken?
Not yet, no.
And in the course of your proposal and your application, have you engaged in any traffic studies or hired anybody to conduct a traffic study?
Not at this point, not yet.
Okay.
No, we're just at the start here. We just want to get the approval, and then we do everything from there.
We would, based on how the decision, then we would move forward on that, but we're more than willing to look at that.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you. Those are my questions. Mr. Ruff, Mr. McKeegan, I don't know if you have any questions for the applicants at this point in time before we turn things over to the floor.
So it appears like the main reason, or one of the main reasons for the rezoning request is to allow for the apartment buildings to be built. Would that be correct?
Well, I think under R2 with sustainable overlay, I believe, Phil might be able to touch on this, but
Yep.
I believe you can still apply for apartment buildings, but,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
I think the standards with the R3 is going to be better for you guys.
Phil
Yeah.
probably can touch on that.
Right.
more.
Okay.
And if, before we turn things over to the floor, and this is to assist everybody to understand, Mr. Ruff, I'm wondering if you can indicate to everybody, when the applicants are discussing, lot standards, things of that nature, what's the advantage to everybody if this moves to an R3, or disadvantages as the case may be?
Okay, thank you. So the main discussion point is around the overlay zone. So what an overlay zone is it's an overarching zone. It actually supersedes any development standards, any land uses in the standard zone. So the standard zones are an L1, low density, R2, medium density. The overlays are typically site-specific zones that have additional uses that may not be permitted in the base zone, but then it also establishes their own development regulations. So the sustainable overlay has its own section actually in our bylaw that has references to placement of buildings so you acquire the most sun. It has specifics on road and trail connections. So it actually has specific development standards for all developments within that. But it also has specific uses which are not permitted. So the R2 zone, low, medium densities, currently does not allow multi-attached dwellings or apartments. With the overlay zone does list them as a possible use within that area. But the big difference is there's no development standards for what's specifically related to multi-attached dwellings. So there's no density requirements. So in theory, the R3 zone's got a density limit of 25 units an acre. Used in an overlay zone, some could theoretically apply for 50 units an acre because there's no set standards. And then it would have to be decided upon by council at that point, but there are no set standards. The R3 zone gives some certainty on minimum building, minimum lot areas, your density requirements in there, minimum setbacks, those things. So the overlay zone is site-specific. There's only 2 overlay zones we have in town, and it's on a case-by-case basis that they're there. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ruff. I just have one question, just in terms of development standards. Do those include parking standards?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and in terms of the parking standards difference between R3 and R2 with the sustainable subdivision overlay, which is more strict?
The R3. So the base zones are more strict. The overlay zones have no development standards of any nature.
All right,
So it's
yeah.
effectively they're up in the air.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So now, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will turn the floor over now to your questions or comments. So what I'll ask you to do is approach the microphone. You will have to identify your name, and from there, we'll just ask that you provide your question, and I'll make sure to direct it to the appropriate person.
Are we good to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Stephen Donaldson from Dr. John Knox Webb. I'm here in 2 aspects. First, as an affected owner, as the proposed zoning change is directly behind my house, and as president of QCC 57, the condo board, where we're trying to support our homeowners in their view as we develop this. First of all, I want to say thank you to Phil and the other planning staff and others who met with us to help us understand the process and steps to follow. You mentioned a few things tonight about the development standards, which I don't think we fully understand, which I would like to follow up about later. But what I'd like to go through tonight is kind of our overview. First of all, we will be making a detailed written submission, so this is only an outline of our thoughts so far, and we will be encouraging our residents to be making their own submissions as well. Overall, we are against the rezoning for several reasons. First one, does not fit with the design and character of the community. Number two is the proposed design will 4x the density of the neighborhood at that point in the road. We think this is excessive for the area. I think it goes from 8.3 to nearly 32 density per acre at that point, by our calculations. Third one is we believe Stratford can accomplish its objective of higher density within the existing R2 with sustainable overlay without the need to go to R3. Number four, there are a lot of other R3 areas around Stratford where an R3 could be put. It doesn't make sense to us to put it in the middle of an R2 neighborhood, especially one with a sustainable design. Number five, doesn't meet the sustainable design plan characteristics of the neighborhood and ignores the critical factors that were already agreed when this original development was planned. And for us, we believe this will create a traffic issue in Hollis, and we think this needs to be formally studied before any proposal should be agreed. We're very concerned about safety on Hollis at this point. And then number seven is something we're currently discussing. This plan doesn't make sense to us for an environmentally sensitive area, including wetlands. It's something that we'd like to work on further. We have prepared a lot of background information that we have shared with our residents and some of the other residents. Just want to publicly state that we're happy to make that available to anybody that would like that. We're working also very closely with our colleagues on Autumn Lane. So if you have any questions from us on Dr. John Knoxway or Autumn Lane, reach out to John or I. And the last thing is we encourage everybody to make their voice heard tonight as well as through written submission. This is how the town will understand what the affected residents think of this issue and guide its vote. Thank you.
Sir, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else? I think this lady is approaching, but certainly we'll put you in the queue. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you hear me.
Um,
Close enough?
Maybe just, if you could even tilt the microphone up just a tad.
Maybe good?
And I'll ask you to speak up as best you can.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I can just turn it, talk.
Well, actually, ma'am, what's important is that we record your answers so that we can further
Is
them.
that camera there? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm Kennedy Vandenbroek, I'm from 6 Dr. John Knoxway. I just have more of a question on what are the steps towards privacy? Because where I am located is very, like, there's a tree line, but it's not very thick. So we were looking to put up some, more trees, but it is very costly for us. So it's more just like, is there any steps being taken to the privacy of that area? And is there a certain, like, extension of the back of the property? Like, do we know how far that the, parking lot is gonna come, or are the buildings right up against the back there?
Okay, I will actually, thank you. I'll get the developer to address the question in terms of what they're proposing in terms of the lot size, but also what screening they're looking to install. And if you want to stay by the microphone in case you have any follow-up questions, I'll just invite you to do that.
So we would be open to discussion on what type of buffer and work alongside with the town, whether that was a fence or trees. What area are you talking from John Knox?
Yeah, so I'm on like 6, so my backyard faces that way, so I'm more just worried with the apartment buildings, like the level of it.
I
like,
believe,
viewing in through the windows type level, like, cause if we have like big back windows,
yes,
so I'm just more worried with like the higher floors of the apartments, just viewing right in, cause if the fence, we can't have like a 20-foot tall fence.
yeah. I mean, I can't say that
Address that.
you can have a tree that's put in 20 feet tall right away, but we would definitely be open to planting trees and working with the town and putting in a buffer. And I think from the property boundary of parcel 04 to the proposed area, where parcel 06, like this line to this line, and then there's still another setback there. But to give you an idea, from there to there, I believe is roughly 75 feet. And that would be, there would still be a setback there from that boundary line to John Knox buildings, and then setback from that boundary line to the proposed apartments, another 5 meters. So it's, yeah, it'd be over 100 feet from the building to the proposed apartment,
Okay, and
roughly.
thank you. And I'll just get Mr. Ruff. I think he has something to add with respect to a potential drainage site, so I'll just get his comments on that as well.
So just to parcel 04 and 06, well, 06 I can't speak on. I know 04 it's part of the drainage corridor through the area. So putting trees and or screening may be difficult to do because you may interrupt the drainage in the area. So there'd need to be some sort of like engineering, civil engineering review on that.
That was my only question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am, I believe you had a question? Or comment. You're not limited to questions, I should say.
I'm new to this process. My name is Melody Gay, and I live on Hollis Avenue. So I just have a few basic questions. When we look at the two 38-unit apartment buildings, I'd like to know, are those one-bedroom units, two-bedroom, three-bedroom? Like approximately how many people do you see living in these apartment buildings?
Everything right now is still just kind of in the early stages, but two bedroom, two bathroom is the plan that we have now. We also, yeah, there's not to say that there could be some units that would be one bedroom to further increase for affordable housing.
Right, so are these subsidized apartments?
At this point, none of that is, we're just still in the rezoning application process, so
Right,
we
and
haven't.
with the condos, I guess my question is when I was looking at the numbers, would this mean approximately an extra like 200 to 300 people in that area?
I guess that would be dependent, but 38, it would be roughly somewhere around there if it was, yeah, full.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have the exact number, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm Bonnie Gray on Dr. John Knox Way. In the plan, if you, your subdivision plan, if you
Yep.
want to put it up.
And Ms. Gray, I'll just ask you to
Yep.
speak into it as best you can. So
Is
we
that
can-
okay?
I think so.
Yeah. So in the grade area there, that's a prime conservation area with a wetland.
Mm-hmm.
Up in the far corner, it says this might require release from a primary conservation area. So what are you doing? The fact that there's a wetland there and the province says it's a large wetland area there. How, and I'm sure there's a buffer zone. I think the provincial one is 50 feet. And you're putting the 32 townhomes there.
I don't, yeah, I can't really, I'd ask Phil on that,
Yeah.
but I mean, up in the area that, really the wetland is back behind, everything's all kind of cleared out there and very,
The gray zone is a primary conservation area, and up in the corner, it says this building where you've got well, you can see where the townhomes are on the gray area, might require release from this as a primary conservation area. Plus, the wet zone you don't have marked on there.
So I do believe Mr. Ruff can provide you some information on that, Ms. Gray. So I'll call on
Okay.
Mr. Ruff now to provide a little bit of background on the conservation area.
Mike. So I did take a look into this. So the primary conservation area has not been officially designated as that by Ministry of Environment. Same thing with wetland. Wetland is not officially designated as a wetland. It was identified during the initial review of the forest trails back in 2010, I believe, 2011, as a wet area. It wasn't, the wetland area wasn't delineated.
It wasn't, excuse
It
me, it was
wasn't-
on the plan? Yeah, it was on the plan.
They did a preliminary delineation, but it was actually never officially stated as being a wetland under the provincial. it wasn't designated by the province. It's a wet area, but not an official wetland through there. So there will need to be discussions with Department of Environment as to how close into that area that can be done and the official area. I know Ducks Unlimited had looked at, with the original concept for Forest Trails, potentially for a body of water down there, down close to the Trans-Canada Highway, just off of it, as well as a wetland up by, well, pond, I believe it was up just south of Hollis, up by Balderson Court area, up in that stretch. But nothing was, it was suggestions by Ducks Unlimited at that time when the forest trail was originally set up, but was never officially recognized.
Because the wetland wasn't marked on here, we contacted the province about the delineation. They've gone out and looked at it, and they've reported back that a large portion of that area is a wetland, and they're mapping it as we speak, so.
Yep.
When they say a large portion, I'm not sure exactly, but.
Just from being up on the land, I do believe back behind where the proposed lots are, there is an area, wet area for sure, but,
It's not it's a wetland. It's a
Okay.
designated wetland, yeah.
and this is only a proposal, so,
Okay.
if we were to go through the zoning process, I think there would be a further assessment, before any construction or any final plan would be accepted, I believe.
Also, sort of looking at the whole Forest Trails subdivision, I don't know if you looked at that. This is the last 1/5 of that subdivision. So, of course, we're looking at compatibility and conformity with what's there now. This is sort of the last part of it. And Stephen mentioned before the densities, where sort of 8.3 per acre, and this is now up to almost 32. And in the original plan for the subdivision, or the Forest Trails, that area was supposed to be 20 townhomes, which would conform with the current density. So I just wondered if that was considered when you were looking at this area?
It definitely was. Unfortunately, with the cost of building, I think that's kind of changed in a lot of subdivisions to allow for affordable housing.
Well,
That's,
I hear what you're saying.
higher density is the only way to achieve affordable housing now. Like the price of those condo units would be approximately in the range of $350,000 per unit. So it's, yeah, it's
So is
just,
the whole goal to have a lot of affordable housing there?
well, the goal would be, definitely, that would be one of the goals is affordable housing.
So
It's, yeah.
the most recent part of this development was up in Balderson, at the far end, and it originally was supposed to be 26 home units, and it's been developed to 20. So that's a fairly recent decision to sort of go lower density, and now at the other end, it seems to be going the other extreme.
I can't really speak to the other end, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyways, that's a concern
No,
for
for sure.
us, and we're just wondering about the consistency of,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I think, yeah, I don't know, but I think the price range of those houses would be similar to what was in the prior stages of the subdivision and kind of conforms to the area, but I know that's, yeah. Due to the price of building, the higher density is the only way to achieve affordable housing.
Okay, I guess I'm just trying to understand the objective. If you want low-cost housing here, then, okay, that's one thing. Again, it's far from the center of Stratford where there might be transportation, no transportation. So if you have people, so they have to have vehicles, so, and at least one vehicle we've discovered. So there's that consideration as well, like why put
I think-
low-cost housing there.
I think another part of whenever the street opens up to
Mhm.
Hollis, I don't know, we just discussed, there were talks, potentially, Phil, maybe you could touch there, like, it might be a spot where there could be a bus route put in the area.
Okay,
That's, yeah.
okay, well, I understand better what you're trying to do here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
My name is John Chiteri. I'm the condo president of Autumn Lane.
Sorry, I couldn't catch your name.
John Chiteri,
Thank you.
president of the Condo Association of Autumn Lane. I have a question. You keep referring to affordability. Can you tell me what that means?
Affordability?
Well, what are you going to charge for rent, for example?
Well,
Or are they people
Okay,
people
gentlemen.
buying this?
Yeah, I'll ask you to just approach the microphone just so we get those answers recorded. Thank you very much.
again, we're still in the early planning stages and just applying for rezoning, but the approximate sale price of one of the units would be $350,000.
Of the apartments?
Yeah, the condo
That's
units.
affordable for an apartment building,
Yeah.
for
That's-
people who don't have any money.
I'm-
Affordability, that's my definition, that they can't afford it.
I-
So how can they afford $350,000? By magic?
Unfortunately, I think that's kind of where the price of housing has gone because of the price of building, labor, land.
I understand
development.
that, but when you say affordability, what came to my mind was subsidized housing by the province. That to me is affordable. The average person in PEI, and I'm new to the island, most people on the island, I don't think can afford $350,000. Can they? I mean, you're an islander, you should know
Yeah.
better than I
So,
do.
well, sir, I'll just, I mean, those are sort of speculative questions posed to the developer. I'll just ask you to make your comments with respect to not necessarily his knowledge of the economics of Prince Edward Island or
Okay, that's
or
fair.
citizens.
I'm sorry about that.
That's fair, I understand. And I think we all appreciate where you're going with it, but I mean, I'll just ask you to direct your comments solely to.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm-
and that's,
I'm from away, so I don't,
Yeah.
I'm used to the orders to be, okay.
you know, I think it's certainly germane for you to ask, you know, what does it mean to be affordable? I think that's fine. You know, the developer did provide the answer with respect to what his view is about what the average price is. I mean, whether that's market value or whether that's below market value, I mean, we can all have our own comments or thoughts about that, but I'll just ask you to direct your questions to anything in particular about what their
Okay,
intentions are, or what it's gonna look like, or any comments.
Okay, that's fine, that's fair. So I guess your answer to my question about affordability is $350,000, is that correct?
Well, no, we're trying to get as close to affordable as we can with the price of today's economics, cost of building. That's all I'm trying to say. The high
Okay.
density, we're trying to get as close to affordable as we can.
Do you have any idea how many people can afford that?
Okay, so
We
again,
don't
sir,
know
so.
any
Again,
of
that's
these
something I
questions.
can't ask.
So
Okay.
what it could be 300,000, it could be 280,000. We're just coming up with a number here.
Okay.
Okay? So to build a unit, though, I do know each unit for this building will be $270,000.
It's a rough,
That's
rough estimate.
So that's, it's about the price of a townhouse then, basically, I guess.
Yeah, no, again, it's very speculative. We're just rezoning is the application. There's nothing firm, and that's just a rough
Okay.
approximate.
Okay, that's fair. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi there. My name's Susan Sateri. I live on Autumn Lane as well. My husband is John. I just had a couple of questions, and some of them have been touched on before. The first one is for the town committee. Is there still available R3 undeveloped land in the already in service, like along the corridor? I believe it's called Stratford's 20-year density plan, that a lot of stuff is going along the Trans-Canada Highway, mixed residential, commercial, retail, in keeping with best practice for 15-minute cities and environmental impact. And my question is is there still available land to develop R3 housing in Stratford, or is there a shortage?
I might ask either Mr. McKeegan or Mr. Ruff if they can answer that. We may not be able to give you a very exact number, but just in terms of a rough estimate of how much remains undeveloped in the R3 zone might be of assistance.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Dale. So with regards to that, there is very limited R3 zone land within town. I'll bring up my mapping system. So currently, all the lots here highlighted in red are the R3 zone lots. Those are the only ones in town. They're predominantly out by the school. So in terms of ones that are vacant, if I turn them off, you can actually see, I think there's only one lot out by there's one lot out here which is somewhat, or maybe this guy right here is undeveloped. So there isn't any, and then the other R3 is Horton Drive area. So
Where is that? Sorry, that R3 is?
This is Horton Drive,
Wharton Drive.
just off the bridge.
Oh, I see, okay. So all that land that's currently empty along the Trans-Canada from Sobeys to the bridge, that's all sold already for development? That's full?
That is, yes, it's set up for development. There are concept plans for that area. It's not zoned R3. Those are mixed-use zones,
Mixed use?
yes.
But it would be suitable for R3 if it were opened up. Like, I'm just saying, mixed retail, commercial dwelling spaces. You don't see that being developed for R3?
Well,
There,
I might answer that question. So in terms of where we're at, in terms of our mixed-use zoning, I can say this, ma'am, is that as constrained as we are on the R3 zoning, I can say that we're almost equally as constrained on our commercial zoning as well. We are quickly running out of commercial space. So mixed use, I think, in keeping with the spirit of your question, it certainly can be developed for just that as mixed use in terms of a mix of commercial, residential. And certainly there's plans in place, and the land that you're speaking of along that corridor is, I don't believe any of it's for sale. I could be mistaken on that point, but certainly the development plans, there are some in place certainly, but there's a much more long-term and nothing as far as I can tell that are immediate and staring us down.
I misunderstood then. I thought that was the corridor for the 20-year plan where building was going to happen in Stratford, the increased density plan. I must be misunderstanding that.
No, I think you're right. I don't think you're wrong about that, is that will be our most dense zones. For instance, within the so-called urban core zone, those proposed 12-story high buildings and things of that nature, that will certainly be the most dense, but I would hesitate to say that that's the only place where we're going to see any density whatsoever.
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
I guess where I was going with that, and that's, I didn't have any idea that there was limited land still available for R3, because where I was going with that was the whole goal of sustainability in building and preserving the environment now is to put density where infrastructure exists, where transit exists, where people can walk to shopping, walk to services, walk to work, or use cars on a limited basis. My issue with this whole plan is that you are increasing traffic, increasing population in an area that wasn't designed for it and where no transit exists, definitely not walking distance to any shops or services. So that was the motivation for my question, and the second part was to the developer, which maybe you've answered now. I wondered why a developer would purchase land that is zoned for R2 and then apply for it to be changed to R3. Similarly, when we were here at the last meeting, purchase land zoned for R1 and then apply to change it to R2 as you're doing on Strawberry Lane. I don't understand why those proposals are entertained if there is better place for that density of dwelling. And I'm not against density. I used to work in our previous home against the stop sprawl movement for urban density because it's good for the planet and it's good for the way we live. But you have to put those dwellings where they work for sustainability, for access to services, transportation, etc. There is no access to services from that location on Hollis except by car. So I really question why that is entertained if there is somewhere else to put it that's more appropriate. I didn't realize until I hear you saying that so much of the land along the Trans-Canada corridor through Stratford is unavailable. I wasn't aware of that. That was my main question.
Okay. I might
So-
just, we might just, to address one of your points on transit, I do think Mr. Ruff does want to provide some commentary on the transit side.
Okay, so with the transit one, the original proposal for Forest Trails did consider public transit in there. It was held off until the connection to Reeves Estate was put in place. The original plan called for, I believe, 2 bus stops at, it didn't say where specifically, but potentially 2 bus stops along Hollis, and then approach T3 to put a bus line through there. T3 is not going to put a bus that has tri-turnaround in cul-de-sac. That cul-de-sac is not the easiest to turn a bus around in, let alone a normal vehicle at the moment. When Hollis is connected up McIntosh, that would open up a good bus route in, so you could either come in off the highway and up or down. So it opens up more opportunities to have a bus route through there. And it's
Definitely.
something the town would pursue, like go to T3 with and talk about and try to get a bus line through there. And maybe it'd go up through the community campus, up through that area, or maybe to the commercial sides on the Trans-Canada.
That makes sense. But that access is going to be opened regardless of whether the apartments are built.
Yes, yeah.
Even if it's just decided that it's going to stay R2.
Yes, yeah.
They are
The
going to open that
original concept
access.
for Forest Trails always had Hollis connecting with McIntosh. That was the original concept. Even back, like the original concept where townhouses were initially considered on Lot 10, it was always going to be connected up. It's always been designed that way, so.
So then the last part of my question, and then I'll let somebody else have a chance, is with regard to vehicular traffic, we already have heard that we are very concerned about the amount of traffic that will potentially go down Hollis. People will not use the Trans-Canada access for a short trip, as we see in our neighborhood now. You go down Hollis and you drive along Mason, also a residential street with a lot of kids, to get to Bunbury, to get to the bridge, so you can miss the roundabouts and the traffic lights. That's what everybody does. I don't see the other additional 200-plus residents in a new development doing any different, even with the access to the Trans-Canada open. They may, some, but if they want to get to Sobeys, they're not going to go out to the Trans-Canada, probably. I mean, we just see a lot of increased traffic on our street that wasn't designed to handle it. And the last part of that is parking. I think you have 80 spots designated for parking, potentially, for those 72 apartment units, and that's without the townhomes, which will have their own driveways. 80 spots for potentially 72 apartments, double occupancy. We're still talking like 130, 50 people. You might have 2 cars for every unit. What we can see happening is already starting to happen along Hollis, is there'll be parking on either side all the way down. Impossible to get a spot. It's not what that area should look like, and I'm really specifically interested in these discussions that Bonnie mentioned with the province about wetland. It is a sensitive area there. There is a huge amount of water that flows down that hill from top to Autumn Lane, where we already have a drainage problem with water up against our houses, and I'm concerned that if that gets disturbed further, it's not going to be able to handle the additional runoff as it's designed to. And I know those things can be addressed, but I think these concerns need to be considered by the town. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Besmiristo. I'm resident on Autumn Lane. I would like to raise my concern about the traffic and the safety that we'll have on the Hollis Avenue. So we are looking for about 76 new apartments there, and like Susan said, probably 2 cars per unit. And we know that we have the new high school there. So we can see that the traffic on that, in Hollis Avenue will increase significantly. A comment about the developer. He was saying that they're gonna build affordable housing. Nothing is concrete. We're just saying words. It's gonna be affordable. We don't know. And another comments I heard from the developer, they said that, oh, we are going to apply for the permit and later, to change the zoning, I guess. And later, if needed, we can do a study. As I know, before we start a project, we should have all the studies and we go from there. So why we need to start backwards? Let's do it correctly. Let's start, do the studies, and if the study says that it can handle it, then we go from there. So please, let's start from the beginning. Let's start straight and do things properly from the beginning. I had a question. Last time that I was here, there was a meeting for the Strawberry Lane, and one of the residents asked why his house was changed its zoning. And I think Mr. Phil or the other gentleman, I'm sorry, said that we do that one so the city can keep up of the zoning. We want to have everything R2 or R3. So my understanding is that right now, everything there is R2. So why we want to change it to R3? Is that gonna make it more difficult for you to manage? Just a question.
I can say fairly confident that it won't. I think, I'm not here to speak on behalf of the developer by any stretch of the imagination, but what I would suggest is that I think the rationale provided for the change to the zoning is there's more stringent standards, believe it or not, in the R3 than versus the R2 with the sustainable subdivision overlay in their eyes, specifically in terms of parking, but in terms of lot sizes and setbacks and maximum densities. So I think there was an interest in that from the developer just for some more stringent standards. But in any event, do recognize what you're saying, sir, about the studies, and certainly I'd welcome anybody to put that in written submissions so that we can consider that in the proper context.
Okay, yeah, I understand that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to make one point before we move on, that this is only the start of the process. We've had some letters sent out and things like that, so this is really the real beginning of this whole process. So it's going to go through a number of stages and iterations before it gets to planning board, who will then look at the whole thing and all the information that was gathered. And that's what this is an information gathering session. No decisions will be made on this evening at all. So going forward, it's a process, within a process kind of thing. So at the end of the day, all the information is gathered. It will be reviewed by planning staff. It will be reviewed by planning board, and recommendations will be made to council. And then council can make a decision on which way they want to go as far as proceeding or deferring for more information, things like that. So there's still a lot of steps yet to catch things that we feel are necessary or council feels necessary in order to make the right decision. So we're far from the end yet. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Shirley R. Snow, and I'm a 5-door drive. Okay. Just want to clarify with the developers, you said about selling units. Are these apartments or condos? Just to clarify. Condos. So on the plan here, it says apartment.
It's just a preliminary plan.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Right now, it's just a preliminary plan, and we're just in the zoning application process. But the plan, as of right now, would be for condos.
Condos.
Yep.
Okay, could we bring that map down? On 5-door drive, I'm lot 43, which would go right by the parking lot. And as it is now, there's definitely a drainage problem there, which the town is well aware of, but has not been addressed as yet. Every spring, we have loads of water at the bottom of our lots. I mean, it's, the water level is high there. So, and in the wintertime, you're going to be plowing that snow to the back of your lot, which is right on our tree line, which we will have more water. So I'm just wondering if we're going to have a sinkhole there.
Any drainage would have to be, after the zoning and the development phase, would have to be designed by an engineer and approved by the province and the municipality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I can't speak to any water issues in the current
Okay.
development.
So then a question for the town is, if this developing goes through, about inspection, and how can we trust that that will be done properly?
So just so I can understand your question, so in terms of whether or not the requisite like drainage work is done and things of that nature? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, the drainage is a problem right now, and
Right.
it has, the town knows about it, and it hasn't been addressed as yet.
Okay.
So we're still waiting for something to happen. So, like, my question is, if this goes through, you know, it's going to be a worse problem. We still need some drainage there. And, like, I know you only have so many inspectors in the town, and they're busy, but, like, how can we trust that that will be done properly?
The best way I can answer that is to say that, and it was mentioned that we have engineers design stormwater management plans for site-specific situations, so that any development that's being developed on a certain site, there's hard surface from the building, there's hard surface from the asphalt. So those engineers take the calculations into play in order to develop the stormwater management plan so that the proper runoff areas are captured, any detention areas are holding water so it's slow release. So there is a system, and the professionals take care of that in the design of the lots when they know what's being built there, how much hard surface there is based on rainfalls and movement of water. So that is usually addressed by the professionals who deal with that on a daily basis. So that's from the town perspective, and we rely on those people, not only from the province, but from the developer who hires the engineer to do that type of work.
Okay, another question is, like, we have a tree line there now, and I'm sure if you're building there, parcel 0-6, how wide is that? And would you be leaving trees to give us privacy?
From,
Yes.
and I will go back to the mic, but from those two boundary lines, I think is approximately 70 feet.
70 feet.
And like stated before, we'd be open to any buffer area, whether it was trees or a fence.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And as far as the drainage as well, I don't know, in Stratford now, is there, as-built that are done whenever completion, prior to completion?
I can speak to that. So in terms of drainage, we're looking at requiring as-built. So there's a preliminary plan that says we're going to have water going from McIntosh to the north. So, and then the engineers say it's going to go this direction. And then, so that gets registered with a subdivision development agreement that gets registered on title that says there's a river that goes from McIntosh up. And then prior to occupancy or issuance of building permits, we do have ability to require like final grading plans that show water, the ground is sloped, so water would flow as per the original plans. So we can have guarantees within there that, hey, this is your proposal, you have water going south to north. Before you get your building permits, you have to make sure that is in place. We're starting to require that now with developments. In the past, it was not necessarily done, but it's something we're definitely looking at bringing in more and more, requiring final grading plans in place.
So essentially, before we could sell a unit, we would have to get surveyed to shoot the elevations to confirm that we did in fact follow the drainage plan to a T to flow the water, the way it was proposed by the engineers.
Okay, thank you for answering my questions. It's easier to address these before
Yeah.
and not after. Okay,
No,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Tim Hollis. I live on 9 Dewar Drive, be lot 41, right up there. Okay, I've been in that place now probably 30 years, and we were for all the development that was behind us. We thought they were going to follow all the rules and regulations, which was good. But then they pushed in John Knox. We're like, oh, they're going to get close to our house like this. Oh, this is gonna be good. But it was good. But then we had a water problem, and we still have the water problem from John Knox. So they sent people up to fix it. They didn't fix it. They just sort of maintained it. That doesn't go on my property, but it comes like this far. And you're talking about wetlands in the spring? I have the wetlands. I have the ducks. I got pictures. My son kayaks in the little pond. He plays hockey, and then it goes away, right? So how are we going to know parcel 06 is going to be to fix that when John Knox isn't even fixed yet behind there? And I think there was some lady on the end of John Knox, I think I was talking to her, she runs into the same problem, and there's a lot of water. And Stratford's been down with their little baby excavator one time, and they put this little moat in or whatever, but instead of the moat running this way, it runs this way. You know, the water's not draining, and we addressed that situation. And when the mayor was running for his election, which was a good time, his first time, I said to him, I said, look at the water in my backyard. He said, I'll address that, he said, because that shouldn't sit there any more than 24 hours. It's never really been addressed, and every spring I have the same problem, every single year. Like, I even have pictures, if you want to scan through them yourselves, right here. Do you mind if I step up here?
Well, actually, what I'm going to ask you to do more than anything is it would really be appreciated if you can put them in the form of a written submission.
You guys have them already. You guys should have them already, because I sent them.
In what, like, when did you send them, I guess?
Oh, God, I'm not too good with this phone thing. Say a year and a half, 2 years ago. How's that?
I might ask you to resend them, just
Okay.
because now we can consider them appropriately within this rezoning.
Yep.
And I mean, I can't offer you any guarantees as to which way this goes, certainly. I mean, this is the time just to gather this information.
Yep.
That's the sort of information I think that will go a long way to addressing any, whether or not any drainage plans or anything like that is satisfactory.
But how did the John Knox slip through Stratford, and this one's not going to slip through?
I can't speak to that right now. I mean, the best I could say, and I know it's only a quarter answer to you from my perspective, is I wasn't on council at the time when John Knox was proposed, so I'm not sure what the background was
Okay.
about that. But certainly, all I can offer you at this point in time is, now that we're here, is that we'll certainly address those issues and make sure that that drainage is at least addressed in the plan.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt these gentlemen here may have something to say about it in terms of what their plans are in terms of that. But as Mr. Keegan said, we work closely with engineers, and we don't just go by guesses. We do rely on those professionals.
So 06 is not going to be a trail anymore either, is it? They're going to change that? That was supposed to be a trail when it was first developed.
So I'll leave that up to the developer. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know what the original
Yep.
plan on the original plan of Forest Trails subdivision, I can't speak to that, I'm not sure. I can say, again, to the drainage, we would be committed to doing as-built to any of the drainage.
Where's all that snow going?
And, well, it'd have to be designed by engineer. And I can't speak to what's going on. I don't know. I've never seen in the back of John Knox or wherever the water problem is, but I mean, I can't say for sure without seeing it, but we would be open to helping to fix any of the issues when we're in there doing the work. Open to the idea. I can't commit to anything because I haven't seen it, but I couldn't imagine it being too terribly tough. I don't know. We'd have to see.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. So, Ms. Gray,
Yes.
I'll just ask to see if there's anybody else who has not yet spoken before I'll ask you to make another presentation. So I'll just ask you to take, yes, sir? Yeah. So this gentleman just behind you is approaching, and then we'll get you after, sir.
Good evening. My name's Blaine Morrison. I recently moved to John Knox Drive. I think everybody's dancing around the question here tonight. I don't think anybody wants an apartment in their backyard, is really what it is. Low density, high density, whatever. We moved here, we've been a resident of Stratford for 30 years. We just downsized, my wife and I. We bought John Knox Drive because it seemed like a retirement community, okay? Quiet, dead-end street, whatnot. I don't want an apartment in my backyard. And I think it's annoying that you come out apartment, now you're saying condo, okay? And I've never seen a $350,000 affordable condo in my life. So I think we're being misled for what's going on.
Okay, sir, I think we're veering into some,
No, I'm just,
Yeah.
this is a public meeting. You asked our opinion. That's my opinion.
thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Al Karim. I'm on Balderston. At first, when you were talking about the R2, R3 zoning and describing what the zoning details, I'm not a planner. I have no idea. So I'm going to ask for clarity between the R2 with sustainable and R3. And one statement was made that in the current zoning, this build can still be done, but they still want to rezone it. So I'm kind of a little confused now that it's R2 with sustainable, that this property and this proposal can still go ahead as on this zoning, yet we're still asking for an R3 zoning. So what is truly R2 with sustainable? Like what makes it that? And the difference between that and R3? Thank you.
I'll leave, I won't expect the developers to speak to that. I'll ask Mr. Ruff to address that.
Yeah, so the primary purpose of using the R3 as opposed to the sustainable overlay are the development standards. So the R3 zone's got specific development standards that pertain to multi-attached dwellings. So it's got minimum lot areas, minimum side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, and density requirements. The sustainable overlay does permit them, but there's no established development standards. So in theory, depending on the applicant and council, you could theoretically get something that does not, that would be, say, 40 units per acre and 0 lot lines. So right up against the road, in theory. So the overlay, when the overlay was set up, it actually missed putting development standards in for multi-attached. The use was thrown in there, but there wasn't any established standards. So going to the R3, it gives the town and the community more certainty as to like how many units can go in there, what the required setbacks are, what the parking requirements are through there. So it's more certainty as to what can be done there and more limits as to what can be done. So it's actually more restrictive to go to the R3 zone than it is to rely on the overlay zone.
And I'll just before, I'll ask if there's, I know you've gone back to seat, but is there any follow-up to that, or is there any clarification that you're looking for on that, sir?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Fred. My name is Fred Forstner. I'm 42 Autumn Lane, representing 42 Autumn Lane. I'd just like some clarification on the R2 and R3. So we've said repeatedly that changing this zoning to R3 is going to lead to increased certainty as to what's allowed in there. So could you run through the process? Would you be allowed to build those apartment buildings or condos in that area if it was an R2 with sustainable overlay? And what would the process to do that look like?
Okay, so in theory, within the overlay zone, multi-attached dwellings are listed as a special permit use. So a special permit use goes through a public meeting process and through council. So in theory, in that overlay zone, you can do an apartment. The the base R2 zone, you cannot. So if there is no overlay zone in this area, so let's say you're Kelly Heights is an R2 zone, you can't do an apartment building. The overlay zone allows additional uses, but what it also does, it eliminates any development standards. So in theory, it allows more uses, but also eliminates any certainty on number of units or limits on units, limits on setbacks. So
But correct me if I'm wrong, if there was to be an apartment building built there, leaving the existing zoning in place, it would have to go to another meeting,
yes,
and it would have to be approved by town council.
yes.
And what basis would that approval be made for those apartment buildings?
There, it would go through the standard development permit review process on that one. So there'd be considerations on compatibility with the area, similar criteria from the zoning.
So in other words, were that to occur, the residents of that area would get a chance to talk to their town councilors and say this is not compatible with the area, and the development could be refused on that basis if the R2 zoning is kept?
It could be refused, yes, or there might be mitigations put in that says, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z to reduce impacts on neighborhoods.
But the residents of the area would get more say in what that development looked like?
Not necessarily. It would go through the standard public meeting process, which is what this is.
Okay.
So they're using the standard, the overlay zone. There is the public meeting process where members of the public can present their comments and questions.
So if it is changed to R3, the developer can look at this and say, okay, now we have certainty as to what we can put in that area, and we don't have to go back and ask again the residents what it should look like or how it should conform to the existing uses of the area.
So with yes, so the R3 zone, they're listed as conditional uses. So there's no public meeting required. There's
Right, they can proceed to development
yes.
without asking again, and I have a follow-up question to that,
Yeah,
so.
Just before you do though, I don't want to take us off track, but with the conditional use, that's still a matter that does go to council.
Okay,
Okay, so despite the fact that there's no public meeting, it would absolutely be a decision that's made by council, and you certainly as a citizen would have absolutely every right to speak with your councilors about that and provide your perspective to your councilor. And council would ultimately have to vote on that. It wouldn't be developed as of right just because it goes, does that make sense?
absolutely, but everything
Yeah.
we've talked about here is to the developer's advantage in changing the zoning. And I guess I'm curious what the residents in the town of Stratford are, what's our advantage? That's my point one. Second point is, are you doing the townhouses too, or just the apartment-type condos?
Yeah, it's just for rezoning, but we're
But
planning.
once it's rezoned, there's rules, and any type of development that happens in that area, you can say, no, it conforms to R3, and the people that live there don't get a chance for further input.
Just if we get rezoned, we can't just go build whatever we want. There would still be an application process to what we can build afterwards.
Yes, sir, but if it doesn't get rezoned, you still can't just go build whatever you want, but the residents get a say in further development in the area. Am I correct in that?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so, and I have one more question though. So you are talking about the townhouse type development in that area. You currently build townhouses is that part of your business?
Yeah, we build properties, we do single homes, duplexes, three
So
units.
what I don't understand is if you can develop one side of the street with townhouses and be profitable, why can you not do the other side of the street with townhouses, which would be consistent with what's already there and what people expected when they moved to that neighborhood? Both sides would be profitable. Why do we need the apartment-type condos? Who benefits? Are we changing the zoning to make this more profitable for the developer? Because that's what it looks like to me. That's my point. So, is
They're
that-
just applying for rezoning. It's an application.
Right, but once it's rezoned, that's the end of it. There's no chance to go back and revisit this again. Whatever you decide is appropriate to your profitability is what goes there, and we have to adhere to R3 requirements. Am I incorrect on any of that, or?
Well, there's another step involved here that we haven't spoken about, and that is an appeal. Any decision of council is appealable.
Why should we have to appeal if it's already zoned R2?
No, just
Why
giving-
is the change being made to make it more difficult for the residents?
I'm not saying that's going to
And to
happen.
improve the profitability for a developer?
Okay, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's an alternative if it does happen. We, inside planning staff, will go through a stringent review of the rezoning and the pros and cons of it, and bring it to planning board for further discussion. And that point, planning board will make a recommendation to council.
But again, the residents have no further say on the matter,
Well,
once the zoning's changed.
no, and that's not true either. So as I know.
I'm sorry, I don't know the process. I'm not accusing, I just,
Yeah.
I'm trying to work this out.
Yeah, and that's what I want to explain is that you still would ultimately, I mean, you have a somewhat indirect say is it would be a council vote.
Fair enough. So
Yeah.
we have another meeting, we come in, we say, listen,
Well-
we see the plans for the new apartment, nobody's in favor of it, but it conforms to R3 zoning. We don't have a leg to stand on. Is the negotiation's over, whatever is decided to go there is going to go there. And I get it if it's R3 and there's certainty and it's very good for planners and good for developers,
Yeah.
maybe not so good for citizens.
Yeah, so just underlying a lot of this discussion that we're having right now is one of the, I guess, fundamental viewpoints of planning is that planners and planning people and council have to consider what is the highest and best use of any parcel of land. And one of those criterion when we consider what the highest and best use of land is how many dwelling units can we sustainably place into any specific lot, taking into account.
Why is that not done in the original plan?
Yeah, taking into account the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay.
Taking into account the natural features, taking into account the town's needs, taking into account the traffic, taking all of these things that we're talking about into account. All of these things absolutely have to be considered. But underlying all of this is the fact that if you've got land that's zoned in a specific fashion, the idea is to try to
Adhere
use
to
that
that zoning.
as best as it possibly can be. But all of what you're saying is absolutely germane to this topic and what we're talking about. And everything you said, I will certainly encourage you to put it down in a written format, because they're all germane points to whether or not this proposal on the R3 zoning to rezone it to R3 does conform with the existing neighborhoods, does conform with the overall town's vision, does conform with those so-called planning principles such as highest and best use of the land, and to making sure we're taking into account the town's needs, your neighborhood's needs, the current character of that neighborhood, transit, all of those things, traffic. So it's all of a piece, just understanding that for developers to come in, certainly they are a for-profit business, and
Absolutely,
there's
which
nothing-
leads me back to my
Yeah.
point. If you can
Yeah.
develop one side of the street with townhouses profitably, why can't we do the other side of the street with townhouses?
Well, yeah, I'll simply say is, I mean, that's somewhat of a hypothetical, I suppose. I mean, perhaps they could be profitable in single-family homes as well.
Well,
You
I assume they know
know,
their business. If they can't build profitably, they won't build, but
Yeah.
there's a plan for townhouses as it sits on one side of the street. I mean, are you not building townhouses anywhere else in Stratford?
So, again, we're just gonna consider, I'm not sure what the developer's plans are on any other parcels in land Stratford, but really, we're focusing on this land, and I appreciate what you're saying
Okay.
is that, in your viewpoint, from what I understand, your viewpoint is, townhomes are on one side of the street, how come they can't be on the other? How come it can't fit into the R2 zone?
Specifically,
That's
my view is
understood.
why we're being asked to change the zoning to make a developer more profitable in their endeavors. Because that's what it appears like to me, and I haven't heard any cognizant argument that that's not happening
Yeah,
here.
okay,
So,
sure. Mr. Ruff, just.
and that's pretty much my point. I mean, I don't need to stay at the microphone, and I don't want to hog the microphone from anybody else, but I think there's something that's getting lost in this, is that there's no reason to change the zoning aside from increased profitability. And I don't know that the community needs to wear that.
Okay, I think Mr. Ruff does want to sort of address some of this, what you're saying, so I'll certainly give him that opportunity.
Yes, thank you. So effectively, that is what planning is. So came out of planning law and so forth. So planning, I'll read a statement which should summarize it. So planning is a delicate balancing act between the concern of the public good and the private interest of individual landowners. Both are important and neither should become the sole focus of decision makers. Council must provide thorough and thoughtful reasons while evaluating and making decisions on planning applications. So it's a balanced act. Anything we do in planning is balanced act between private individuals and public individuals. And then how do you balance the two? So I understand your point. It's a delicate balance, and then it needs to be thought out and thorough review on both sides.
Okay, I think I've made my point. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Sir, no, actually, I'll just wait. Just as I said to Ms. Gray, I'll give anybody who has not spoken yet the opportunity first. Then we'll go back, we'll cycle back. Ms. Gray was in priority for the second kick at the can. And then it'll certainly give you another opportunity to address the room depending on how we're doing. So I will allow anybody else who has not made a presentation or comments or questions at this point in time to approach.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Sorry, this is really nerve-wracking. My name is Kelly. I live on Hollis Avenue, and I was kind of writing this out, otherwise I'll go completely off track.
Ma'am, if it's okay, I wonder if I get your last name as well.
Sorry, Kelly Brown. So I know we've already kind of addressed some of it with traffic, but basically it's safe to assume that with 76 units, chances are they're probably going to have 2 vehicles each, which is going to be about 152 vehicles. I know one of the bylaws state that there's 1 space per unit required, so approximately 76 vehicles, not including the townhouses, would be parked on the side of the road. Hollis Avenue right now is 2 lanes. There's no shoulder to that road. So those vehicles parking on the side would be reducing any roadway space. So to add to that, which I do believe connecting Hollis to McIntosh is a fantastic idea, especially so after Fiona, we had a tree that blocked Hollis. Great idea to have another roadway out. But right now, if there's an accident on like the Trans-Canada between basically like Reeves Estates or Hollis, people already think they're connected, so they go flying down Hollis Avenue to try to bypass that. So I think by connecting that and then having the additional cars along the side is going to be, well, reducing the roadway, and then having that new traffic would be very nerve-wracking. So there's 3 daycares on Hollis and Myrtle. There's a dance school, a bike rental shop, skateboarding classes on the trail. I know a previous gentleman back there had said that it's a retirement area, and it is, but there's also so many young families. I am one of them. We have a 2-year-old. She's amazing. But frankly, I'm terrified of what this is going to mean. If we have all those cars blocking it, we have the increased traffic, and there's kids, there's so many people on the trail, and I'd just be terrified to know what would happen in that situation. So not a question, just a comment that I really think traffic needs to be looked at and where those cars are going to go. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there anybody else who would like to address either developers or town staff, or provide just simply any comments in general about the proposal to rezone? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, now, Ms. Gray, you've been very patient.
I just wanted to add some comments about the drainage. Just
Sure.
follow up, a number of people have raised that, and Tim, who was adjacent to Dr. John Knox Way, I think he made reference to it. So there was certainly a approved drainage plan for Dr. John Knox Way. The problem is they didn't implement it. So we have been after Stratford to get the developer to implement that drainage plan, and part of the problem, it was not implemented. You had even more flooding down on Mr. Hollis's property there. Eventually, we had to hire a lawyer to get Stratford to follow up with the developer to implement the drainage plan, and they did for finally, after several years, do something to the end that's adjacent to Mr. Hollis's property, but they didn't do it well enough. As he's saying, it's still a problem. So the other half of our property, drainage plan still not implemented. Stratford said that last October, they were going to follow up yet again with the developer to do it. It's causing damages to the condos that are adjacent to the area that you want to develop. So we are about, again, the next week, yet again, probably having to get a lawyer to write to Stratford to say, please, get this developer to comply with that drainage plan. So I think the concerns about drainage are very important and real. And this is happening now with Stratford in terms of not having the developers implement. The plans are great, engineers do them, they certainly make sense, but they're not implementing them. And Stratford, for us anyways, are not enforcing those plans.
Yeah. So ma'am, irrespective of what happens, irrespective of whatever happens with this application, I just want to give you my full commitment right now that, you know, as a counselor with this, with the municipality, and I know your elected representatives are in the room as well, I'm absolutely going to follow up on that, because I do agree that laws and plans are all well and good, but if they're not being respected, not being adhered to, then that causes everybody in this room to lose trust with the municipality. And what we're all about is to build as much trust, obviously, between everybody in this room and the
Fair enough.
town.
Yeah, fair
So, you know, I take that incredibly seriously. And so I'm just going to commit to you right now that I will follow up with that. And if there are issues, and if they are at the hands of the developer or at the hands of the town, then we'll absolutely do some follow-up as it relates to those issues.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. I mean, we'll communicate with you, but it's on the file with the planning section, our issues on this. But it is a real concern, drainage and implementing those drainage plans.
And I do really appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay.
Because like I said, that's just something that, you know, as Mr. McKeegan noted, we rely on these engineers, we rely on these plans, we rely on developers to make good on those plans. And if they're not, then that's a problem for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Autumn Lane also has drainage problems. Unfortunately, we can't go after our developer because he went bankrupt I guess 4 years ago when all the owners moved in for the first time. So what we've struggled with bad drainage that we can't go after anybody, plus all the inefficiencies and damage or the inefficiencies and the poor workmanship that was left behind by the developer. And it's taken, since I've been the president of the board 5 years, it's taken us 5 years. And every year I've had to increase the condo fees. And last year I asked all the owners for a $2,000 non-refundable top-up to address all those problems. So I'm sort of concerned with the drainage is it going to go away for us? No. And I guess my other comment is that it's been very misleading over the last couple of months since we got that proposal when you say apartment buildings. It would have been much clearer if you would have said apartment condos, because my assumption was apartment buildings that are rented out. Maybe my definition is a little bit different, but it was totally misleading to me and probably to a lot of other people.
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. And I know you, sir, had some follow-up comments as well.
Thank you. It's more of a, earlier we saw a rendition of what the apartment buildings would look like. So I think the proposal, and I don't know the terminology that was used for the townhouses, was stacked something or rather? So do you have some kind of a rendering of what that would look like?
Yeah, give me a second.
Thank you.
Bring it up from a previous, this was the previous developer. Okay, there you go. So this was a previous development. So this was a stacked townhouse formation. There's one picture. So that's a concept of a stacked townhouse. So the way it is you have one ground floor unit. So this first door goes upstairs, second door goes ground floor. So from the street, depending on how you do your color format, it looks like a standard townhouse formation. You got multiple doors through here. If you want to see, there's actually two examples in Charlottetown of stacked townhouses. One is on Green Street, just north of Eustis, on the right-hand side. And then there's one right by Holland College, on the, it's the one-way street going east. There's a concept there. It's an up-down split. So it's one door, and you go in, and then there's stairs going up, and then stairs going down. So there are a couple of designs in town, so.
Okay, so that would mean that the front would have parking for two at least? Is that, then that's what our neighborhood would look like then, potentially?
Yes, yeah, that's what the preliminary concept shows. You have like P1, P2, P1, P2. So, and depending if they have garages or not, that might change it up. But yeah, so double parking in front. So.
Okay.
Got time for one more?
I think so.
Yeah, is that okay if
I think, yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think I'm listening to a lot about the benefits of R3 being more protection for enforcing standards as opposed to R2 sustainable. I believe that's what I've heard. I may not understand it completely, but I have the definition of the sustainable subdivision here as with regard to density, and there are three definitions: certified sustainable, so that the maximum density in that type of SS subdivision would remain the same as in the original zone, but council may grant a proportionately higher density in the buildable area, and proportionately is not defined. I don't know what would be considered proportionally, but I think we would appreciate knowing that, because this doesn't seem proportional. The second definition of sustainable subdivision is gold. Council may increase the overall maximum density of the original zone by up to 25%. I don't know if this is gold, but this is a lot more than 25%. And the final definition is platinum sustainable subdivision may increase the overall maximum density of the original zone by up to 50%. And I think all of this is still well beyond 50% of what exists there already. And so my point is, I'm questioning how protective a rezoning to R3 would be, because the existing density statements in the sustainable subdivision seem to protect us a lot more with regard to density in the area where we all bought homes, where we did not anticipate this type of major change, because we were drawn to its forested nature, the quiet end of the street. That's why a lot of us made a decision to buy homes there. And again, I'm not against density. I see that it's necessary, but I feel that it needs to be done where it's appropriate, and this doesn't seem appropriate to many of us. And I'm just wondering where do we sit in those three definitions of sustainable subdivision? Are we certified, gold, or platinum?
So, if I might, I appreciate exactly what you're saying, and there's two different, I think, concepts sort of in a little bit of tension. There's the definitions that you read out, but then there's what are called, development standards as it relates to that sustainable subdivision overlay that can happen in any zone. And essentially what that means is in the development standards for sustainable subdivision, they're essentially limitless in that regard, but then that's in tension to a certain degree with what the definitions for certified, gold, and platinum. And those consider the surrounding areas a little bit more than simply just the development standards as it relates to sustainable subdivision overlay. And so in terms of, certified gold, platinum, what you talked about, it does talk about that proportionality to the rest
Yeah.
of the neighborhood. So certainly that's something that absolutely has to be considered.
Yeah.
When we're talking about, like, for instance, and I'm just putting this out as a hypothetical, for instance, hypothetically, if the rezoning is not approved by council and it remains an R2 with sustainable subdivision, these concepts of proportionality would absolutely have to be taken into account and special permit use by council in any proposed development like this. Not to say that these concepts of proportionality are lost if this changes to an R3. As Director McKeegan is very fond of saying, we always have to pay close attention to the edges between zones, and certainly we always have to consider the overall character of any neighborhood when we're considering any new development such as this, or really any other one that comes before council. So a bit of a tension there, but ultimately these concepts of proportionality do carry a significant amount of weight when we're considering, I would suggest, rezoning in general, but also any specific development within any specific zone.
So that would be one of your criteria in making your decision, is proportionality.
One of many.
Yeah.
One of many.
In one of many, but certainly I would suggest one that, as you noted from our definitions, has certainly some weight within our zoning and development bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can speak to.
And I think I'll let Mr. Ruff follow up on that, because certainly he is the expert, and I'm certainly not.
Sure. Yeah, so in terms of the three levels, you have the certified gold and platinum. So what that was designed originally to do was, if there's a scoring table that was developed when the overlay was put up, and if you scored, so I think the maximum number of points were 390 points across, there were 24 criteria. The scoring table is per the bylaw. So when the subdivision was originally set up back in 2010, the Forest Trails it fell in under the certified component. So they had over 65% of the points granted. And what that does is that, being a certified one, that means you actually get a bonus on your density. The problem is the R2 zones, the R1, the R2, and the R1L do not have density requirements in them. So in theory, you're getting a bonusing on a density that's not there. The only zone that actually has density is the PERD zone.
What zone, sorry?
Is the PERD, the Planned Unit Residential Development Zone. So Williams Gate is a PERD area, but they're not a sustainable one. So the PERD zone is the only zone that has a specific density, and I believe it's 10 units an acre, or 15 if it's rear laneway access. So the bonusing for the certified gold and platinum, it theoretically gives you a density bonus, but there's no density limits in the R2 zone. But Forest Trails was originally set up as, I believe it scored between 65 to 70% of the points on the original scoring table. So it fell within that certified component. So in theory, it would be granted up to the bonus on the density. The problem is the R2 zone's got no density limits anyway. So there's effectively, you're getting a bonus on nothing. There was a bit of an error when the overlay zone was set up. It was tied into zones that don't have density standards.
That's really confusing. Okay.
Fair enough.
I just.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Just one more follow-up.
Sure.
With this zoning, again, I apologize because I'm unfamiliar with it, but were this to proceed to IRAC, does IRAC ever change the zoning of an area? If that zone is not changed and the development as it sits is refused by town council, is it within the, does that happen?
So yes, so one of the powers that's conferred upon IRAC under the Planning Act is that they sit essentially as a decision maker on zoning appeals and zoning bylaw appeals. So essentially, they would step into the shoes, so to speak, of council being the decision maker, and they can do one of two things, essentially. If there's an appeal before IRAC, if something is rezoned, they can either reject the appeal, for instance, and say, no, we're going to keep it as council decided, or they can allow the appeal and change the zone back, so to speak.
I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
Change it back, do they ever change it forward? I mean, if this stays at R2, is there an avenue to go to IRAC and change it to an R3?
Just as, for instance, say if something was changed on the rezoning to a higher density zone, for instance, just hypothetically.
Let's say that it's determined that the zoning's gonna stay, R2 sustainable.
Yeah.
Is there an avenue for IRAC to change that to an R3 zoning?
Yes, so the developer could also appeal. for
Appeal to
instance.
IRAC and change the zoning, so that would be, okay.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, one of the things that's very strong with IRAC, and just through experience, they really focus on the process that was followed to make the decision, just as much as the decision itself. So there's that aspect of it too that's very strong in their decision-making.
Okay, I'll give one last call for any submissions. Go, okay, Ms. Gray? Well, yeah.
Just on the density, I don't know if I misheard you, Phil. The R3 has a maximum density of 25 dwellings per acre. So what this proposal is asking is even over that maximum?
So that is across the whole zone. So what that does mean is, so it's 25 units per acre across that whole, of the whole area zoned R3. So it would mean in some cases, an individual lot might be over that 25%, but the overall across the whole zone would be at. So for an example, the apartment buildings, I did quick calculations, the apartment building lot would be, I think, a density of about 30 units. The townhouses are about 16. But across the board, if you take a look at all the zones, so let's say the rezoning goes through and this whole 9.5 acre property or 10 acre property is zoned R3, that 25 units is the sum total or combined total of all the lots zoned R3.
So you're not looking at that lot 10, which is a hectare, which is 2.7 acres. You don't look at that as
No, so some lots.
a measure? then?
No, some lots would be over, some lots would be under, but the overall density in that zone is limited to 25 units per acre. Like because if you do an apartment building, you might have, let's say, 100 units on one and then singles on the other. It's the combined density of that zone is what we look at.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that's under R3?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, one last final call. Oh, yes?
Hi, good evening. My name is Jing Huang. I live at 12 Dr. John Knox Way. Me and my family moved in Stratford back in 2019. We really loved the Stratford community. It's always been good plannings and yeah, our community built is really nice. We are surrounded by the house, and we were really surprised when we hear about the rezoning plan that there will be 78 apartments built at the back of our community. It's a little bit, it's really different to fit in the community, and it's really concerning us because I have a little child, and many of the homeowners in our area has young families, and it really concerning us about the high densities and also the traffic. And yeah, I understand that you're here to most gathering about the information, gathering about our opinions, so I want to voice it out. And I know most of us don't want to get to appeals, but I still want to want to know about the process of that. If we don't agree with the final decision, because I don't know how it looks like, I understand that the councillor will consider all of the factors that we mentioned and talk about and bring up, but I still want to know if it happens to that the homeowner's not in favor of the decisions, how is the process going to appeals?
So I'm just going to say at this point in time, I'm always hesitant to go down these roads because I don't want to make it seem like we're giving any legal advice or anything like that nature, but all I'll say is that should you or any other person who is affected by this decision or impacted this decision be grieved or feel wronged or feel like the process wasn't followed, you ought to contact IRAC, the Ireland Regulatory and Appeals Commission, and they will assist you through that process.
And when the decision's been made, how are we going to inform? By letters or by news, or what was that going to be?
Okay, well, so there's, it would be by pursuant to any vote from council. And I can tell you that currently, I'm bringing it up here just to see, we would be looking at a potential adoption as of December of 2024. So it'd be at the council meeting December 11, 2024. So citizens can certainly tune into that council meeting to see where things are going and then take it from there. But that would be for the second reading. You would know the first reading on November 13th, 2024.
Okay.
So, and essentially you would have a certain amount of time up until then. And Mr. McKeegan informs me it's 21 days, so I wasn't sure of that. So you'd have 21 days from that date. But at this point, respectfully, I'm not going to really get into any more of the appeal process because that's certainly something outside of our scope here for this meeting.
Are these going to publish somewhere for us to assess if we need?
Which part, sorry?
I mean, these informations, will they, just these PDF, these documents?
Okay, I do believe it might have been sent as part of the letters, but I can't be sure.
The agenda package was not, but we can.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
We could probably work out some way of getting the next steps component sent out.
Yeah, because.
I'm not sure exactly how
I can't
that's been done
remember
yet,
all
but
of this,
yeah.
so.
Okay, sure. What we'll do likely.
This is being recorded on YouTube as well, so you can actually go into that and scroll through to where this screen pops up.
I'm a little bit worried at how
But
it's
yeah, we
looking
can
in the
definitely
video, yeah.
provide details maybe on the town's Facebook page or something. We'll work with town staff to get something out to
Yes,
that
please.
nature.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as part of the process, I also have 3 letters that I wish to read into the record, which were provided in advance for those who might not have been able to attend but wish to have their comments made. These letters are all redacted, and so I don't even know who wrote them, and I don't know the location or the identity of the person who's provided them. And it's addressed to Mr. Ruff as well as the Stratford Planning Department, and it reads as follows. I am writing you regarding the rezoning application located at Forest Trails for Phase 4. My wife and I have lived on Hollis Avenue since January of 2021 and have seen significant development on the street since then. We chose to live in this subdivision because it is a fairly quiet street and is one of Stratford's few sustainable subdivisions. We are generally accepting of development and understand that there is significant demand for housing in the Stratford area. However, we are quite concerned about the impact that this potential rezoning will have on the area. Our primary concern with this proposal is the increase of traffic that will accompany rezoning this area to higher density R3 with the nearly 80 proposed apartment units and 32 townhouse units. The lower portion of Hollis Avenue is a narrow residential street with many young families and already has issues with traffic speeds. The town has been installing speed bumps and radar stations on the street every year since we built here to reduce speeds. We are concerned that this proposed development is going to introduce significantly more vehicular traffic than the street is capable of handling safely. Even as an R2 zone development, which is currently Phase 4 of this Forest Trails development, will indirectly introduce significantly more traffic to Hollis Avenue whenever the final connection is made between Hollis and the approximately 100 dwellings located in Reeves Estates. We are concerned that the additional traffic traveling on Hollis Avenue from the nearly 80 proposed apartment units and 32 townhouses, in combination with the additional traffic traveling from Reeves Estates, will compound and overwhelm Hollis Avenue. We are also concerned that Reeves Estates and Hollis Avenue will become a popular thoroughfare for anyone traveling between the east side of Stratford and the new Stratford Community Campus and high school located off Hollis Avenue, adding the potential for even more traffic to the area. We would request the traffic impacts of this proposed rezoning are studied and the report and results of the study are shared with the affected residents in the area. Our secondary concern with this proposal is whether, with the proposed rezoning, this proposed development will be required to meet the same sustainable subdivision requirements that are currently in place for the Forest Trail subdivision. This was not addressed in the rezoning proposal description, and we would request that this new development is held to the same requirements as the existing phases to maintain the integrity of the sustainable subdivision. For the reasons listed above, we are requesting that the town reject this rezoning proposal and maintain the current R2 zoning of the area in question. As a potential alternative solution, if the town decides to accept the proposal, we would request that the town revisit the connection of Hollis Avenue to Reeves Estates and consider revising the ending of Hollis Avenue to end in a cul-de-sac or similar to serve this proposed development rather than connecting through to Reeves Estates. We feel that this would help to keep traffic volumes on the lower portion of Hollis Avenue at a more reasonable level for a narrow residential street. That's the first letter. Second letter, again addressed to Mr. Ruff in Planning Department. I'm writing to you regarding our strong opposition for the rezoning application. My husband and I moved to Dr. John Knox Way in November 2019 and have since seen significant development around us. We have been generally accepting of new development and understand that there is significant demand for housing in Stratford and PEI as a whole. However, we are quite concerned about the impact that this potential rezoning will have on our neighborhood. We chose to purchase our first home in this area due to the fact that it did not have any plan to develop apartment buildings and provided an affordable option for us to live near other single-family homes, duplexes, and other townhouses. Considering the prices of housing, this is a difficult task as first-time home buyers. This development would encourage us to sell and relocate to a lower density area. Seeing this and other applications to increase density of open land makes it unappealing to buy in Stratford with the risk that this could change as it does not provide stability. More importantly, we chose to live in this subdivision to grow our family because it is a quiet area with walking trails nearby, making our primary concern with this proposal the increase of people, noise, and traffic that will accompany rezoning this area to higher density R3 with the 76 proposed apartment units and 32 townhouse units. This would mean a minimum of 108 additional people, plus more if they have a partner and/or family. Hollis Avenue is a narrow residential street with many young families and already has issues with traffic and speeding. The town has been installing speed bumps and radar stations to monitor and reduce speed. We are concerned that this proposed development is going to significantly increase vehicular traffic beyond what the street is capable of safely handling. Even as an R2 zone development, which it is currently, Phase 4 of this Forest Trails development will indirectly introduce significantly more traffic to Hollis Avenue when the final connection is made between Hollis and the approximately 120 dwellings located within Reeves. We are concerned that additional traffic will be traveling on Hollis Avenue with this proposed development, in combination with the additional traffic traveling from Reeves will compound and overwhelm Hollis, especially with the new Stratford Community Campus and High School located off Hollis, adding the potential for even more traffic to the area. We would request the traffic impacts of this proposed rezoning are studied and the reports and results are shared with the affected residents. For the reasons listed above, we are requesting that the town of Stratford reject the rezoning proposal and maintain the current R2 zoning of the area in question. As a potential alternative solution, if the town decides to accept the proposal, we would request that the town revisit the connection of Hollis to Reeves and consider revising the end of Hollis to an end in a cul-de-sac, or similar to serve this proposed development rather than connecting through to Reeves. We feel that this would help keep traffic volumes in the lower portion of Hollis at a more reasonable level for a narrow residential street. And the third letter received, it's addressed to Mr. McKeegan and Mr. Ruff. Good morning. It states, I'm a resident of Autumn Lane in Stratford, and I wanted to email regarding the proposed rezoning of the site on Hollis Avenue to build apartments. My understanding is that the condo board for Autumn Lane has been quite vocally opposed to this rezoning. I am writing because their position does not reflect that of all the residents, but our opinions are not being taken into consideration by the board. I am unable to attend any town meetings, but I would like to go on record stating that I support the rezoning of the Hollis Avenue site and the building of apartments on that site. Thank you for your time, and then the name is redacted. So those are the three letters. So next steps for this process. First, written comments will be received until 12 p.m. on Monday, October 21st, 2024 by email to PROUGH, P-R-O-U-G-H, @townofstratford.ca, or hand-delivered to the Town Center Planning Department. Actually, wait, before I go any further, I want to check, I neglected to check this, to see if there's any comments or questions from anybody viewing online. I don't know if Mr. Massing or can indicate before. Okay, thank you.
I'm assuming you emailed them?
Yes,
Okay.
But you're up on the screen, Phil, and they should be redacted, so.
Yeah, I know. So, okay, so give me a second. Let's take that note. Okay.
Thank you. So the first comment from the public meeting, apartments need to be built close to main roads and/or areas where residents can take transport and easily access amenities. It's 100% certain that 108 units will equal another 200-plus cars. Next one, rezoning an area from lower to higher density can have significant environmental and social impacts, increased infrastructure demands such as more roads and utilities. The aesthetic mismatch between the higher density development and surrounding lower density areas can create conflicts, exacerbated by increased traffic congestion as more residents and vehicles put pressure on existing roads. While developers may claim this densification promotes affordability, in reality, profit often drives the process, with developers building cheaply to maximize sales or rental prices. This can result in units priced at market rates, which are still out of reach for many, thereby failing to address true affordability and further contributing to traffic infrastructure strain. Thank you. Those are our comments submitted from online viewers. As I indicated, and I'll repeat this, written comments will be received until 12 p.m. on Monday, October 21st by email to prough@townstratford.ca or hand-delivered to the Town Center Planning Department. Secondly, Planning Board will meet for discussion and make a recommendation to Council, and that meeting occurs on November the 4th, 2024. Town Council will meet for first time to consider the first reading of the zoning bylaw amendment on November the 13th, 2024. And if passed first reading, Town Council would meet again for a second reading and adoption of the zoning bylaw amendment on December the 11th, 2024. So I want to thank everybody who viewed online and thank everybody for coming in here today, as well as those who attended on the first occasion. I do certainly appreciate your patience, appreciate your participation in the process. As I indicated, this is not the day for final decision-making. As Mr. McKeegan noted, this is one step in a process in which you will have, again, the opportunity for input through your written submissions, which I'll encourage you to do. And beyond that, I do want to say thank you one more last time, and I will now adjourn the meeting.